glottal stop is ah. In Japanese, when you say hai, that's a glottal stop. Well, in English, it means T. In Japanese, it means nothing. In English, it means T. Well, in Japanese, it means short vowel, not long vowel. So, in position before an L, for example, it is possible to say that lady, but it's now rather old-fashioned. My students, my 20-year-old students, without exception, nowadays say that lady, that lady, that lady. And you'll hear this from Americans as well as from British people. So it's a very general change. That lady, that lady. Try it, that lady, that lady, that lady. You mustn't leave it out, you mustn't say that lady, that's not right, but that lady. If it's easier, you can use a glottal stop. Not likely, not likely, not likely, not likely. Different languages, different languages, different languages. Get lost, get lost. Notice this applies to the T in get, but not to the T in lost. When it comes after S, this can't happen. You don't ever get a glottal stop in ST. So get lost, first time coming lost. Well, there are actually these three possibilities. Lateral release, get lost, that lady, rather old-fashioned. Glottal stop, now the general one. And separate explosion, very slow, very careful, get lost, that lady, only used in very exceptional circumstances. Same applies before N. Here are some phrases with final T before N. Old-fashioned pronunciation like this, what number? Nasal release, what number? Not nice. Usual pronunciation nowadays, glottal stop. What number? What number? Not nice. What number? Not nice. Very formal, very careful. What number? Not nice. But we don't recommend that to anybody speaking connected speech. Best, if you can do it, I think, now is glottal stop. What number? Not nice. Different names. Different names. Come and sit near me. Sit near me. Sit near me. Sit near me. On the handout, we've got some more examples. 2 on the handout. You also get this before an obstruent, that's a plosive, affricate or fricative. So in words like football, very widespread now to pronounce it with a glottal stop at the end of the first syllable. Football, 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 football. Although you can say football alveolar, and you can even say football, very, very careful, very slow. Normally, football. Football. What's that? What's that? Often with glottal stops. What's that? What's that? What's that? More conservative pronunciation, alveolar T. What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? It's quite good. It's quite good. It's quite good. Glottal stops. It's quite good. It's quite good. It's quite good. It's quite good. More conservative pronunciation with alveolars. It's quite good. It's quite good. It's quite good. And within a word, I should have underlined the T in brightly, not missed, brightly, brightly. More conservative pronunciation, brightly, brightly, brightly. But both British and American are generally nowadays brightly, brightly, brightly. And before a nasal again, atmosphere, 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 atmosphere. Department, and so on. Well, just a brief excursus. This is part of a series of changes that are happening. If we take the phrase get off. Now, we've been considering T before a consonant, but T before a vowel in the next word is also beginning to change in English. I think we're in the beginning of a great sound change that is going to affect all final T sounds. In a phrase like get off, well, somebody of my age and background still uses a voiceless alveolar plosive. Get off, and you can do that as well. Nevertheless, it's giving way in London, among younger people in RP, but certainly all ages of people in London use a glottal stop and say get off, Get off, get off, get off. Now, for somebody of my age of background, that's not right. That's a vulgar pronunciation. But I'm sure if I were 30 years younger, 40 years younger, I'd be saying get off. Get off. Get off. And my worry is, you see, that those of you who are teachers, if you're teaching 15-year-olds, 20-year-olds, people of their age in England use these glottal stops. And if they're trained to become teachers, they're going to be teaching people for the next 40 years. So we've got to look at these sound changes. We've got to become aware of them, because languages do change, and we can fight these changes if we feel so inclined, but we shall be unsuccessful because language changes. Well, that's only one of the things that happens to T. In American English, as I'm sure you know, it tends to become voiced. And Americans say, get off, get off, get off, get off, get off. That is heard in Britain as well. I use that in my colloquial speech. Get off, get off. Put it down, put it down. Not in my more careful speech, but in my casual, quick speech, I can certainly do this. Get off. So we have a kind of battle now in England between the glottal stop, which is our homegrown development, and the voice T, the so-called flat or tap of American English, which presumably has come to us from American. And the two are now fighting. And there are other possibilities as well that enter into this battle. The Irish have a special kind of fricative. The Irish say, get off, get off. Would you get off? Would you get off? Yes. Not quite the same as an S. The tongue is flatter, but get off. Put it down, put it down, put it. Yes. Well, we have a lot of Irish people living in England, and that, you know, we have Irish announcers on the radio and television. They're very popular. I think the reason Irish announcers are very popular is that they stand outside our class system. The problem in England is we have not only geographical differences, but social class differences in pronunciation. So people are very sensitive to these kinds of things. And for radio announcers, there's the problem, how can you be popular and at the same time sound correct and acceptable? Well, the Irish, because they're from somewhere else, they don't have our social class system, they're equally acceptable or unacceptable to everybody. And so they're rather popular for radio and television. They're using this. Get off, get off, get off, get off, get off. If you see the Irish president, the former president, Mrs. Robinson, who now works, I think, for the United Nations, she does this all the time, and she is considered a very good and, you know, excellent public speaker, and you can certainly hear this in her speech. In the north of England, there's another one again. In the north of England, people say, get off, get off, or get off. Now that's considered bad, that's considered rough, but it means we've got these four different directions all fighting it out. Well, mostly you can ignore all that, but you should know about the glottal stop. Let's move on to co-articulation. By co-articulation, I mean the tendency of sounds to adjust themselves to whatever follows, or perhaps to what precedes. And in English, the best known example of this is assimilation, of the kinds you see on the screen, which are very well known, and very easy, I think, for Japanese learners. 10, when it's followed by a word beginning with m, changes to 10, so we often say 10 minutes, 10 people, 10 boys, that's easy. We do the same with final D, so good plus boy gives you a long B, good boy. Good morning gives you good morning, all bilabial. A good person. Same changes also take place before velars, so 10 plus kinds becomes 10 kinds, 10 kinds of thing, 10 girls, good girls. Well, we needn't waste time on that because it's very nice and easy. Let's also notice, though, that this can affect final S and Z sounds. a nice shape. Now, it's not necessary to say nice shape. If it's easier, you can certainly say nice shape. That's a nice shape, nice shape, nice shape. We do this all the time in connected speech, a nice shape. This shop is a fish shop. This shop, this shop, this shop, this shop is a fish shop. The next one doesn't concern you. I'm afraid this is an overhead I had for somebody else. French learners tend to make this mistake of voicing it, but that doesn't apply to you, so we can ignore that. If you look at the handout, we've also got the example, as you know. Some people can change as you know to as you know. Now, for Japanese learners, again, that's easy, common sense. What I'm doing is telling you it's all right. If somebody says as you know, that's fine. You need to tell them they must carefully say as you know. If you say teacher instead of teacher, that's not all right. If you say I can see you instead of I see you, that's not all right. But as you know, that's okay. When we have you or your after T and D at the end of a word, we very often make a ch or a j after it. Tell me what you saw becomes tell me what you saw, what you saw, what you saw. Again, happens in American English in just the same way. Tell me what you saw. What you saw. Did your father know? Did your father know? Did your father know? Well, those are all kinds of articulation, anticipation of the sounds that follow. Point 4 on the handout. In American English, as you know, you pronounce R wherever there's an R in the spelling, so you say better. In British English, we see pronunciation, you don't pronounce an R at the end of a word, so you say better. Better. And what do you do with your coffee? Stir. Stir. However, when the next word begins with a vowel sound, then we do put an R in, so we say better off. Better off. That's called linking R. Better off. Better off. What shall I do to my coffee? Stir it. Stir it. Stir it. Linking R. And you get it after the vowel sounds whose phonetic symbols you see there. By the way, I'm using phonetic symbols on the screen and on the handout. I hope you're all familiar with them. If you're not, well, ignore them. But for those of you who know them, I hope they'll be helpful. Now, the difficult thing about linking an intrusive R is the intrusive R, because sometimes in English, we use an R sound where there is no letter R in the spelling. We do this because we treat words like comma in exactly the same way as we treat words like better. So just as we say better in than out, we would say you should put a comma in here, a comma in, put a comma in here. If you have ice cream and the flavour is vanilla, we call it vanilla ice cream. Vanilla ice cream, vanilla ice cream. Now, this is used by almost all English people, and they're not at all conscious of it. Sometimes if you draw it to people's attention, they're a bit shocked, and they say, oh no, I don't do that, or I don't like that, I don't approve of that, but for most people it's something they're just not aware of at all. And so, from your point of view, I think the important thing is to know that it happens so that you won't misunderstand people, you won't be surprised. And if somebody asks for a vanilla ice, you know that it's ice that they want and not rice. Okay, vanilla ice. It's ice, it's an ice, not rice. And similar confusions that might arise. You even sometimes get intrusive R's within a word, compound words of various kinds. Or plus inspiring usually gives or inspiring, or inspiring, or inspiring, or inspiring. Well, I'm not sort of recommending this, I'm not telling you you've got to do this, I'm just telling you about it so that if somebody says or inspiring, you're not surprised. Even within a word such as withdrawal, you can get withdrawal, withdrawal, withdrawal. And even ing forms of verbs. Now you know the verb to soar, like a bird can soar, S-O-A-R. That gives you soaring in the sky. Well, likewise, to soar wood sounds exactly the same. So that too gives you soaring for most English people. Soaring. Well, that's called intrusive R, soaring. A little reminder about R sounds and L sounds. Let's start with R sounds. Okay. Mostly English R is what we call an approximant, that is a sound which you can get best, I think, by imitating Americans. What do Americans sound like? So do and then read, arrive, and carry. You probably know that 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, people could alternatively say carry with a Japanese style R. Not really anymore, that's become old-fashioned and disappeared, and people of my age or younger say carry with a R just as in read or arrive. After T and D, it comes together with the T to give you an affricate like this, tree, tree, tree. That's, I know, a difficulty for some learners. Tree, 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 and the corresponding voice sound, drink, 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 to attract attention, attract, attract, attract. When we turn to L, remember that L is lateral, that is the air escapes around the side of the tongue taking place on the alveolar ridge. We have two rather distinct kinds of L sound. Clear L, before a vowel sound. So let, look, yellow, filling, tell us. In American English it's a bit darker. Americans say let, look, yellow, filling, tell us, but that's not important. We all use a rather darker L before consonants, and finally, that is elsewhere, so in a word like shelf, building, filled, and tell them. Now here's a little exercise. Here are some animals. A lion and an antelope. Do they have clear L or dark L? Lion. Well, is it followed by a vowel sound? Lion? Yes, it is. Right. So, clear. Lion, lion, lion. Antelope again, followed by a vowel sound. O. So, clear. Antelope, antelope, antelope. Now, what about this? Don't think we're going to be able to get the camel quite on. There's the elk and the camel. What do they have? Clear or dark L? Dark L. Elk, it's followed by a consonant sound, so it's dark elk. Elk, elk. Camel is at the end of a word, so if you say the word at the end of a sentence or in isolation, dark again. Camel, 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 camel. That sort of thing, by the way, is something you can use in the classroom to make phonetics more interesting. Put up some pictures, get some real examples. Instead of doing it all just with words in a book, do it with pictures. Well, I have news for you about dark L, because dark L is undergoing a sound change known as L vocalization. And what happens is that dark L, in those positions where L is dark, is turning into a kind of vowel sound, into an O. O. Again, it doesn't really belong in my own speech for somebody of my age and background and generation, but all my students do it a very great deal, and I think this is good news for Japanese learners. There are millions of British people who do this, and it's much easier for you to learn to say milk rather than milk. We don't want milk, no. So rather than struggling with milk, dark L and K, why not say milk, which is much easier? That's my view anyhow. I think you could encourage your students to say milk, 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 milk. And milk comes in a bottle. Bottle, 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 bottle. Better than struggling over bottle with lateral release of alveolar T into dark L, bottle. It's considered rather vulgar to say bottle, but that is nevertheless what Londoners say, and I expect in another 100 years that'll be general in Britain as well, but so far no. So a bottle is okay and milk is okay. Here are some other words with vocalized L. There's a shell, shell, shell. There's a bulb, bulb. Here's a pencil, 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 pencil. Okay, pencil is fine with an L if you can do it, but if you can't, pencil is absolutely acceptable. And if it's not hot, it's cold. Cold, cold, cold. My pronunciation, cold. My student's pronunciation, cold. Well, those are changes that are happening. Let's move on next to the question of elision. Point 5 on the handout. When you have a word ending in a cluster of consonants, sometimes you can simplify the cluster by omitting one of the consonants. This applies to words ending in ND and LD. If the next word begins with a consonant, then we often omit the D. So in a phrase like stand still, we readily say stand still, stand still. Now, it's not good to say stand still. No, even worse, stand still. But yeah, stand still. Leave the D out. Stand still, stand still, stand still, stand still. Stand back, stand back. Stand clear of the doors. Stand clear, stand clear, stand clear. Likewise with old, we can omit the D if the next word begins with a consonant sound. So rather than old man, we say an old man. An old man. There's no man over there. An old man. An old man. An old man. This applies to all words with those clusters at the ends, whenever they're followed by another word that begins with any kind of consonant. It also, of course, applies to the word and we usually pronounce it un, not un. We also get simplification of voiceless clusters, such as FT and ST, where the T disappears. So in the phrase left behind, we just say left behind. They were left behind. Left behind. Left behind. They were left behind. They were left behind. Left behind. Much better than left behind. Left behind. Left behind. Next week. We leave the T out. W counts as a consonant. We say next week. Next week. Next week. Next week. Next week. The last day of the holidays, the last day, last day, last day. Not last today, but last day, last day, last day. I really think you should encourage your learners to do this, because otherwise we have this struggle with final consonants, which is quite unnecessary. Somebody comes to me and says, this is the first time I have been doing that. Don't say first of the time. No, first time. This is the first time. It's the first time. Yeah, exactly the same in American English. The first time. First time in American English. So not first a time. No, first time. This is the first time. This is the first time. I hope it's not going to be the last time. Last time. The last time. Did you notice? I noticed myself. I said, I hope it's not going to be the last time. Gonna be. Gonna. Some people think that gonna is not found in British English. It is. We do it just as much as the Americans. We don't write it down, we don't put it in writing, but we do say it. We say gonna, meaning going to. I hope it's not gonna be the last time. There are some more things that happen in final clusters. Notably when we have words ending in S or Z, and the next word begins with a TH sound, often the article or this and that. Is this the one? Is this the one you want? Is this the one you want? Now, in slow speech, we would have that all there present and correct. Is this the one? Is this the one? But in more rapid speech, things start happening to the... It can be assimilated, making it like a Z. Thus, is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one you want? Is this the one you want? In rapid speech, that happens. Is this the one you want? In even faster speech, they can disappear entirely. Is this the one you want? Is this the one you want? Is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? On the handout, we've also got the phrase, what's that? Now, these are very elementary phrases. You know, what's this? What's that? And beginners should learn to say, what's this? What's that? Difficult. What's this? What's that? But once they can speak more fluently, we can start losing the TH sound and saying, what's this? What's this? What's this? What's this? What's that? What's that? What's this? What's that? What's the time? What's the time? Be careful not to lose the S or Z sound. You can't say what this. No, you can't say what that. But you can say what's that? What's that? What's that? So the or remains, the or might disappear. What's that? I want next to consider vowel weakening. In English, I think you can argue that we have actually two sets of vowel sounds. We have one set of vowel sounds that occurs typically in stressed syllables, and we have another, much smaller set of possibilities that occurs in what I would call weak syllables, which are some of the unstressed syllables. And we have a lot of processes in English that involve switching between a strong vowel and a weak vowel. We see this, for example, in related words in the dictionary. If you compare preside and president, well, they're obviously related, but pronounced very differently because the vowels switch. When the stress is on the last bit, preside, the first vowel gets weaker and becomes I, prick, preside. On the other hand, when it's stressed because of the effect of the suffix in president, then it's strong, prep, president. The second vowel, when it's strong in preside, is I, preside. When it's weak in president, then it's I. And we have all of these processes then giving us a strong vowel in some circumstances and a weak vowel in other circumstances. We also see this in other similar pairs of words.
There's some more of them.
Anatomy, but anatomic. Anatomic, effectively ic suffix, but notice what happens to the vowels. The first vowel is weak in anatomy, strong in anatomic. Second vowel is strong in anatomy, weak in anatomic. Third vowel is weak in anatomy, strong in anatomic. And the last vowel we can ignore. Same set of things happening in democracy, democratic, and resident, reside, residential is like president that we were looking at. Well, we also have this in the words that have strong forms and weak forms. Before we come to them, just let's check on the handout. There's also the effect of variant pronunciations. Just look at that. That's the third line of section 6 on the handout. We have a number of words in English where you can choose between two pronunciations, one of which has a strong vowel and the other of which has a weak vowel. So the days of the week can either be said with day, strong, at the end, or with di, weak. So we can either say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or we can say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And it isn't more than that. It's just you can choose either strong or weak, and we don't mind. The month, this month, the first syllable can either be strong, no, November, or it can be weak, November, November. And again, it's a matter of strong or weak. Some words then have a kind of fluctuation between two pronunciations. Well, moving back now on to content words, from content words to function words, notice these words such as can, of, them, even me, where we have a strong form, can, of, them, me, and a weak form, can, of, them, me. This then is again an effect of vowel weakening, and it's important to understand that you should use a weak vowel for these words most of the time when they're not stressed. So with at, how do we say that? We say, it gets cold at night. We don't say at night, we say it gets cold at night. Try it. It gets cold at night. Yeah? It gets cold at night. It gets cold at night. The movie starts at 7. The movie starts at 7. The movie starts at. The movie starts at 7. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. And then with can, weak form, can. You can all go to the party. You can all go to the party. You can all go to the party. They can stop when they like. They can stop when they like. They can stop when they like. What can I say? What can I say? What can I say? Now, the last sentence is trickier though. Here, at the beginning of a sentence, it doesn't matter. You can choose. This is like November. You can say, can you come? Or can you come? Doesn't matter. Can you come today? Can you come today? Both possible. At the end, it's got to be strong. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. You couldn't say, yes, I can. No. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. All right. Well, I think that's something you know about, strong and weak forms. I hope so. Rather more complicated is another phenomenon which we call stranding. And this concerns words with strong and weak form when they're in special syntactic positions, special grammatical positions. What are you looking at? Now that at the end there has to be said strong, has to be said with the vowel a. Although it's usually not stressed. What are you looking at? It doesn't have a rhythmic beat, but it's nevertheless at. What are you looking at? What are you looking at? Something to laugh at. Same thing. Something to laugh at. Something to laugh at. We used to tell you, you must use the strong form at the end of a sentence. Well, that's not exactly the way the rule should be. Because if I put something after it, what are you looking at then? What are you looking at today? What are you looking at, Mrs. Robinson? It still has to be strong. So it's not really position at the end of a sentence. The people who are interested in generative syntax have now given us a better explanation. These prepositions have been stranded, that means left all on their own, because a noun phrase has been moved from after them. It means you're looking at something, something is taken out, put to the beginning and becomes what? You're looking at what becomes what are you looking at? When a preposition is deprived of its noun phrase by a syntactic movement, then it has to be strong. That's the right rule. Something to laugh at. We laugh at something. On the handout, I put a little underline to show you the place where the stranding occurs, where there's something missing. And on the handout, we've got the other example we see on the screen. She or I can run faster than I can or than you can. First can, weak. She can run, she can run, she can run, she can run. She can run faster than I can. Last can, strong. She can run faster than I can. Why? This can, it's an auxiliary verb, a modal verb, it's got its main verb after it, it can run. This can has lost its main verb. It's been left behind, it's been stranded, and so it has to be strong. Stranding, the word comes, it's a metaphor, in the old days when you had a sailor on board ship, and the sailor behaved badly, he could be punished by being stranded, that is, put on the beach and left behind, and he has to look after himself. That's stranding. He was stranded. When you're stranded, you have to be strong, because you have to rely on yourself. So we have a strong form when these words are stranded. Okay, we move on now to one or two things that concern vowels. Not weakening now, but compression. Things that change in more rapid speech, or when words are more familiar. Vowels can sometimes become semivowels when they're before a weak vowel. So lenient can be pronounced lenient. So 3 syllables, lenient, becomes 2 syllables, lenient. Influence becomes influence. A prisoner becomes a prisoner. Rattling becomes rattling. Preference becomes preference. That's what's called compression. It's happened historically in words such as every, which was once upon a time every, but is now every. And several is now normally said as 2 syllables, several. Different, 2 syllables, different. And in my view, it's now usual in words like general, reference, factory, battery, history. Even though there are a few people who might still say general or reference or factory. Most people have got these categorically compressed. Others are variable. You can either say victory or victory. You can say lateral or lateral. You can say camera or camera. You can say federal or federal. You can say bothering or bothering. Stop bothering me. The only case where we tend to avoid it is in things like the name of the country, Hungary. Why? Because if you compressed, you would get hungry, which is something else. Well, this also happens in connected speech. So, tell me a story can become tell me a story, tell me a story, tell me a story, tell me a story, tell me a story. The train is about to arrive. About to arrive. About to arrive. Notice it only happens before a weak vowel. About to arrive. To go out and about. Out and about. Out and about. Compression again. Here's some more. A couple of minutes. A couple of minutes. A couple of minutes. A couple of minutes. And here's quite a complicated example. Neighbour gets linking R, so neighbour of. A neighbour of ours. Schwa plus R gives you syllabic R, neighbour of ours. A neighbour of ours. Syllabic R compresses to non-syllabic R before a weak vowel. A neighbour of ours. 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 Well, that's enough of that, isn't it? One last little topic is smoothing. And again, this is something that you need to know about for passive comprehension, but you don't necessarily need to. Let's have that one first. You don't necessarily need to do it yourself. Okay, there's some fire. Fire. But do I always say fire? No, I don't always say fire. Sometimes I say fa, or even fa. Fa. If I tell you I'm going to study science, you must know that science means silence. Okay, yes. If I say I'll draw a diagram, you must understand diagram. This is a power station. Power station. That is a power station. Power can smooth out to power or power station. Power station. If I say nowadays, you must understand nowadays. If I tell you University College is in Gower Street, you must be able to understand Gower Street. If I say it is Gower Street, you must also understand that it's in Gower Street. Gower Street. Gower Street. Here's Mr. Howard. What's his name? Mr. Howard. Mr. Howard. Ah, yes. Howard. So you must be able to reconstruct these smoothings. It's not important for you to actually say them. You can say fire, that's fine. But if somebody says to you, fa, remember it might be fire. Okay.